He looked down and saw what he expected, a bony hand reaching out to grab the cuff of his pants, and the half-naked woman was coming out of the bag. The mouth of the sack was wide open now. The woman's upper body was free. Her blue eyes had lost their spark and were now dull. Her disheveled shoulder-length hair was coarse due to malnutrition. Her face had been beaten until it swelled up. Her skin, dry as a dead tree, was covered with countless pink spots the size of fingernails. There was not so much as a thimbleful of life left in her emaciated body. She was already a corpse. No, she wasn't dead, of course. The fact that she snatched Seba's cuff spoke volumes about that. But could an organism that is only capable of breathing be said to be alive? Could you let go, please? There was no response to Seba's request. It was clear at a glance that she wasn't ignoring him. Her eyes reflected nothing. They were cast into space through the barely open slits below her swollen eyelids. If Sebas moved his leg, he could easily shake off those fingers. They were weaker than dead branches. But instead he asked, "Are you in trouble? If so, hey old man, where do you come from?" A threatening voice interrupted. The man had reappeared in the doorway. He had a big chest and thick arms. Hostility clearly showed on his scarred face as he turned his penetrating gaze on Sebas. In his hand he held a lantern. It glowed red. Hey, old man, what you looking at?" The man loudly clicked his tongue and gestured with his chin. "Get lost. If you leave now, you can get home safe." When he saw Sebas wasn't moving, he took a step forward. Behind him, the door closed heavily. As a threat, the man placed the lantern near his feet with exaggerated purpose. "Hey, old man, you go and deaf. Can't you hear me?" He rotated his shoulders and stretched his neck. He slowly brought his right hand up and curled it into a fist. It was clear he wasn't the type who hesitated to use violence. Sebas smiled. He could be described as an elderly gentleman. His profound smile put people at ease and made them feel cared for. So why did the man back up a step? It was as if a predatory beast had suddenly arrived. Hey, under the crushing pressure of Sebas' smile, words that weren't words trickled from the man's mouth. He hadn't even realized his breath had grown ragged as he backed up farther. Sebas tucked the scroll, with the Wizard's Guild seal on it, into his belt. Then he took one measured step toward the man to close the distance between them and reached out. The man couldn't even react. With a sound that was barely a sound, the hand clutching Sebas' slacks fell onto the street. With that as the signal, Sebas grabbed the man's collar with his outstretched arm and lifted him up with no trouble. Had there been any witnesses to this scene, they would have thought it was a joke. Judging the two on appearances alone, Sebas would have had no chance against this man. Youthfulness, breadth of chest, girth of arms, height, weight, and aura of violence, he was beat in any category. But the elderly gentleman was lifting up this robust, heavyweight class guy with one hand. Perhaps someone witnessing this scene would have keenly felt the gap between these two men. It is said that the intuitions of humans, their animal instincts, are dull, but they still probably would have been able to detect this unmistakable gap. The difference between Sebas and this man was the difference between absolute strength and absolute weakness. The man, who had been lifted completely off the ground, kicked both legs and squirmed. Then he tried to take hold of Sebas' arms. The fear born of sudden realization shone in his eyes. It had finally dawned on him that the old man before him was something completely different from what he appeared. Any futile struggling would only further anger the monster. This woman, what is she? The quiet voice sounded in the petrified man's ears. The voice flowed with the quiet of a clear stream. It was terrifying because it clashed with the context. He was effortlessly holding a man aloft with one hand. "An employee of ours," the frantic man replied, his voice cracked with fear. "You asked what she is. Your answer is an employee." The man wondered if he had said something wrong, but in this situation, that answer should have been the most accurate. The man's bulging eyes flitted around. He looked like a petrified little animal. "No, I have friends who treat humans as things. I thought perhaps you might treat them that way as well. In that case, you wouldn't be doing anything wrong. But you told me she is an employee. That means you're taking these actions despite recognizing her as a person. Then allow me to ask another question. What will happen to her now?" The man thought for a moment, but there came a noise like a creak. Sebas' grip strengthened. The man suddenly found it more difficult to breathe. Gug, he let out a strange scream. Sebas' meaning was clear. "I am not giving you any time to think, just talk. She is sick, so we are taking her to the shrine. I am not very fond of lies. KGH eeg." The man let out another bizarre shriek. His face reddened with every increasing application of force from Seba's hand. Even if Sebas made the massive concession of assuming this person had put the woman in the bag to transport her, the fact that she'd been tossed into the road gave no indication of the care of one taking her to a shrine for treatment. It had been more akin to throwing out the trash. Stogar, now struggling to breathe, the pinned man began fearing for his life and flailed about wildly without thinking. Sebas intercepted the fists coming at his face without trouble. The man's kicks connected with his body and dirtied his clothes, but the older man didn't budge. Of course, he didn't something so insignificant as a human's feet wouldn't affect a giant lump of steel. Sebas continued speaking, unfazed, as if the kicks from the thick legs didn't cause him any pain. I recommend telling the truth. Garg Sebas squinted up at the man whose face had gone crimson from lack of air. Aiming for the moment right before the man passed out, he let go. The man crashed down on the road with a loud thud. Jjjjog, the man expelled the last remnants of air in his lungs as a scream. Sebas stared down at him as he gasped for oxygen and then reached his hand toward his neck again. Whoa, wait a minute. Enduring the pain and thoroughly impressed with fear, the man rolled away from Sebas's outstretched hand. Yes, I was going to take her to the shrine. That's a lie, isn't it? You're tougher than you look. Sebas had thought the man would break immediately under the terror of suffering and death, but although he was scared, he didn't seem ready to talk so easily. That meant the danger he would face after leaking information was equal to the threat Sebas posed. Sebas considered changing his plan of attack. This was, in a way, enemy territory. The fact that the man wasn't requesting backup meant he didn't expect anyone would come quickly. Still, if Sebas stayed here too long, it would surely make things more complicated. His master hadn't ordered him to cause trouble. He received the order to blend in and quietly gather intelligence. If you were going to take her to the shrine, then I don't suppose there is any issue if I bring her there myself. I will take custody of her now. The man's shocked eyes darted around. Then he desperately spoke. There's no proof you'll actually do it. Then why don't we go together? I have an errand to run now, so I can that's why I am taking her later. Sensing something from Sebas's expression, he quickly continued. She's legally ours. If you lay a hand on her, you'll be violating this country's laws. Just try and take her that's abduction. Sebas froze and furrowed his brow for the first time. This argument had struck a critical location. His master had said that attracting some attention was unavoidable. That was necessary while playing the butler of a rich man's daughter. If he broke the law, the authorities would be involved. There was a chance someone would see through his disguise. In other words, it could directly cause a huge fuss, and he would attract the kind of notice his master didn't desire. Sebas had a hard time believing this coarse man was educated, but his words overflowed with confidence. Someone must have put these ideas about laws into his head. If that was true, there was a good chance this defense would hold. Now, with no witnesses present, it was a simple matter. He could physically force his captive to talk. He could leave a corpse here by simply snapping the man's neck, but that was his last resort. He would use it only if this situation threatened his master's plans. He couldn't do that for this woman he didn't even know. So does that mean the correct thing to do would be to abandon her? The man's vulgar laugh irritated Sebas as he vacillated. Should such a splendid butler take on a big problem like this and keep it a secret from his master? Sebas frowned openly at the grinning man for the first time. The man must have gleaned a hint of weakness from his reaction. I don't know what noble you serve, but if this blows up, won't it cause trouble for him? And what if he has a good relationship with us? He'll get pissed, won't he? You think my master can handle a little thing like this? Rules exist to be broken by the powerful, you know. The man flinched a bit, as if he had an idea how that worked, but he regained his confidence a moment later. So you want to try it then? It didn't seem Sebas's bluff was going to make the man stand down. Does he truly have such a powerful backer? Sebas judged this line of attack to be ineffective and switched angles. I see. Yes, this does seem troublesome, legally speaking, but there is also a provision in the law that allows forcible rescue when someone calls for aid. I am simply helping her in line with this clause. To begin with, she is unconscious, so she needs to visit the shrine for treatment, yes. Mnbu that s the man mumbled, at a loss. His ignorance was exposed. Sebas was relieved at the man's inability to act and slow-working brain. He told a huge lie. It sounded plausible, since his opponent had brought up legalities. If the man were to counter with another argument, even a lie, Sebas didn't have enough knowledge of the laws of this country to fight back. He only had a smattering of legal knowledge. Not studying it more thoroughly was what had landed him in this situation. On the other hand, someone with only a fragmentary understanding of the law would hesitate when it was brandished in a fight. Plus, this man was an underling. He probably didn't have the authority to make decisions on his own. Sebas turned away from the man and held up the woman's head. "Do you want me to help you?" he asked. Then he brought his ear to the woman's dry, chapped lips. What he heard was faint breathing. It was respiration that could be mistaken for the last gasp of a deflating balloon. There was no reply. Sebas shook his head slightly and asked again, "Do you want me to help you?" Helping her was completely different from helping the old lady. He wanted to assist others whenever he could, but if he got involved with this woman, there was a good chance it would lead to a fair amount of trouble. He considered whether the Supreme One would forgive him, or whether this went against his will. A cold wind blew through his heart. Still no reply. The man quietly laughed that vulgar laugh again. As someone who understood what hell she had been in, he knew there would be no reply. She had been able to speak freely. They probably wouldn't have tried disposing of her like this. True luck did not occur twice in a row. Things that happened so frequently couldn't be called luck. If grabbing Sebas' slacks had been that woman's luck, she wasn't going to receive a windfall again. Her fortune had been the fact that Sebas happened to come down this alley at the right moment. Everything that occurred after, she achieved with her will to live. It was definitely not luck. A slight movement, yes. Her lips made a truly feeble movement. It was not an automatic one, like for breathing. It clearly contained her intent. Upon hearing what she said, Sebas nodded emphatically. "I am not interested in saving every single person who asks me for help, like a plant expecting to bathe in the rain from the heavens." However, when someone is struggling to survive, Sebas' hand moved to cover the woman's eyes. "Let go of your fear and rest. You are under my protection now." Clinging to his warm, kind touch, she closed her vacant eyes. The man couldn't believe it, so naturally he tried to say what was on his mind. "It's a lie you didn't hear her voice." He was about to snap, but he froze. "A lie, you say?" At some point, Sebas had stood up. Now the gleam in his eyes pierced the man. Those brutal eyes. The man's breath caught. It felt like his heart would be crushed under such a gaze. It seemed to weigh on him with physical pressure. "Are you saying that I lied the way you did?" Other man gulped loudly, swallowing the spit that had pooled in his mouth. His eyes moved to Sebas' arms and stuck there like glue. Perhaps after getting ahead of himself, he remembered his fear. "Well, I am going to take her and go now." Wait, please wait." The man raised his voice. Sebas glanced at him. "You still have something to say. Are you trying to buy time?" "No, I am not. If you take her away, there's going to be trouble. For you and for your master. You've heard of the Eight Fingers, I am sure." Sebas remembered hearing the name during his intelligence gathering. It was a criminal organization that dominated the kingdom's underground world. "So I am telling you, just pretend you didn't see anything. If you take her away, I'll have failed at my job, and they'll punish me." Realizing he couldn't win with strength, the man tried for pity. But Sebas turned a chilly gaze on him and answered in an icier voice. "I am taking her and going. Give me a break. They're going to kill me. Should I kill him now?" Sebas thought. The man's moaning continued as he calculated the pros and cons. It was possible the man was buying time because he was waiting for help. But Sebas judged from his attitude that wasn't the case. He couldn't figure out why. "Why haven't you called for assistance?" Stunned, the man rapidly explained. Essentially, if Sebas were to escape while he was calling for help, it would be as good as reporting to his compatriots that he made a critical error. He didn't think he'd be able to win by force, even if he called for help. That's why he was trying to persuade Sebas to change his mind. He was so pathetic that Sebas suddenly felt his strength drain away. His urge to kill went away. Still, it didn't mean he was going to hand over the woman. "So why don't you run away? That's not an option. I don't have enough money. I doubt it costs as much as your life, but anyhow, I'll pay for it." At those words, the man's face brightened. Sebas knew it was safer to kill him, but if he could get him to make a desperate escape, it would buy time. Then he had to heal the woman and take her someplace safe. Besides, if Sebas killed him here, there was a good chance they'd launch a search for the missing woman. Since it was unclear how she'd gotten into this situation, it wasn't possible to conclude that his actions wouldn't endanger people who knew her. Mulling it over, Sebas wondered why he was doing something so risky. He truly couldn't fathom where the ripple in his heart that caused him to try to save her had come from. Anyone else from Nazarick would have ignored her to avoid trouble. They would have stayed hands-off and kept walking. When someone else in trouble, it's only natural to help them. Sebas put aside the workings of his heart, even though he could not explain them. He didn't need to be thinking about them right now, and answered the man, "Take this, hire an adventurer or something, and run with all your might." He took out a leather pouch. The man's eyes were doubtful. Perhaps he didn't feel the amount in the small bag would be enough. The next moment, his eyes were riveted on the coins falling onto the street. They sparkled like bright silver platinum trade currency. 10 coins, worth 10 gold pieces each, lay on the ground. "Run as fast as you can. You understand, right? And I have a few questions. Do you have time to answer?" "Yeah, it's fine. I came out to dispose to take that woman to the shrine, so they'll assume I am a little late coming back." "Understood. Then let us go." With that, he jerked his chin to say, "Follow me," picked up the woman, and set off walking. Mid-fire moon, August 6:58 p.m. Sebas' lodgings were in one of the royal capital's better neighborhoods. It was a house in what could be called a luxury residential district. It was cozy compared to the mansions lining the streets nearby, but it had probably been built with the assumption that 2 servant families would also live there. It was way too big for only Sebas and Solution. Naturally, there was a reason they rented such a mansion. As long as they were disguised as a great merchant family hailing from faraway lands, they couldn't very well live in a shabby residence. To do it, though, with no connections or reputation at the construction guild, they had to pay an absurd sum up front. This was many times the going market rate. When they arrived and went through the door, someone was there to meet them. It was a combat maid in a white dress, Solution Epsilon, who worked directly under Sebas. The other residents included shadow demons and gargoyles, but since they were guards, they didn't come to the door. "Welcome, Bar." Solution lost her words and froze mid-bow. She directed a frostier gaze than normal at the woman Sebas held against his chest. "Master Sebas, what in the world is that?" "I found her." For a moment, Solution gave no response to that short answer, but the air grew heavy. "I see. It doesn't look like a souvenir for me, so what are you planning on doing with it?" "Well, for starters, could you heal her wounds for me?" "Wounds?" Solution took a look at the woman. She shook her head once she understood and then fixed her eyes on Sebas. "Couldn't you have left her at a shrine?" "Yes, I probably should have thought of that." Unshaken, Sebas regarded Solution with cold eyes. For a brief moment, their gazes met. Solution was the first to look away. "Shall I dispose of her?" "No, I've brought her this far. We should think of a good use for her." "Understood." Solution didn't have a very rich range of expression to begin with. Her face was blank. Even Sebas couldn't comprehend the spark of emotion in her eyes. Still, it was very clear that she was not welcome to this idea. "First, could you please assess her physical health?" "Understood." "Then allow me wait perhaps." To Solution, the woman didn't warrant any more care than the absolute minimum. But Sebas didn't think she needed to be examined in the entryway. "We have an open room, so could I ask you to do it there?" Solution bowed her head silently. They didn't speak to each other while they carried the woman from the entryway to the guest room. Neither Solution nor Sebas was the type to make idle chatter, but there was another reason something was off. Solution opened the guest room door for Sebas, since his hands were full. The room was dark, because its heavy curtains were drawn. But it wasn't stuffy at all. It had been opened several times, so the air was fresh, and it was cleaned regularly. In the room illuminated by only a sliver of moonlight through the gap in the curtains, Sebas gently laid the woman down on top of the bed's clean sheets. He had performed minimal first aid by pouring Kai into her, but given the way she didn't move a muscle, the woman made him think of a corpse. "Okay, then." Solution carelessly ripped off the cloth wrapped around the woman and revealed her battered body. It was a pitiful and awful sight. but Solution's unchanging expression was bland and uninterested. Solution, I'll let you take it from here. With that, Sebas left the room. Solution, who had begun palpating the woman, didn't attempt to stop him. Once he was in the hallway, he whispered in a voice that wouldn't reach Solution, "This is foolish." The words immediately vanished into the hallway, and naturally, there was no one to respond. Sebas fingered his beard unconsciously. Why did I save that woman? He couldn't hit upon a precise reason. The lion spares the suppliant, I guess. No, that wasn't it. Why did I save her? Sebas was the butler who performed steward duties at the great tomb of Nazareth and had completely devoted himself to the 41 supreme beings. He should have been serving and surrendering everything to the one who had taken on the name Aints Ul Gaun, the guild master. There was nothing fraudulent about his loyalty, and as an utterly faithful servant, he wouldn't hesitate to throw away his life for his master. Still, if he had to choose only one supreme being to swear his allegiance, he knew who he would attend. Touch Me. Touch Me was the strongest member of Aints Ul Gaun and Sebas' creator. Second to none, he attained the class of world champion. Their guild grew stronger by killing players, among other things.